So Martin Foley's, I mean, is it nearly 40-year-long struggle one way or another with the Criminal Assets Bureau is really coming almost to an end. And we had probably one of the last hearings around it today, mostly surrounding his home that he owns in Crumlin and that he's owned for many years, which the state are trying to seize off him to partly pay off a cab bill. And that cab bill, which was large enough initially, has spiralled into €738,000. What was the proceedings today? It was it's all focused around this house, really.
Yeah, so it all focuses around the house, but it seems to be kind of at the 11th hour. This interested party or this notice party has come in, which is his wife, Sonia. So that was the case had been heard in December, one of the final hearings, and then they asked to adjourn so that she could put in a sworn affidavit. So again, they came to court today. And there was another application for an adjournment because they wanted to go through some of her legal, they wanted a hearing basically in the High Court so that she could, state or figure out her legal entitlement to the home. So she's claiming that they got married in 2013.
Yeah.
This order wasn't for Cab to sell the house to recoup the tax bill that they owed. That wasn't given until 2014. So when she married Martin Foley, she sort of said that there was sort of an implied, that it was implied that she would, receive half the home, that she would own half the home.
Yeah.
In particular, there was a will that was written. They also have a daughter together who's 10 years old. And her concern there is as well that if Cab do go ahead and there's an order for the sale of the home, that herself and her daughter will be left homeless. So there was a lot of back and forth today. Again, they did try and get that adjourned. And again, there was another sort of, Cab came and said, look, this is all very well and good, but this has gone on for years and years now. This has gone on nearly 10 years. And the judge decided, we would actually have the hearing today. Now, it has been adjourned for the actual results of the hearing for her to go and consider these legal arguments that were given today. So we won't hear exactly how that's been ruled on until next week. But
I mean, so a decision will be made. There's no more evidence to be given, certainly at this stage. So, I mean, there was also some remarkable evidence about Charlie Bowden. If people remember, Charlie Bowden was a member of John Gilligan's gang. He was suspected of involvement in that whole drug dealing operation. But ultimately, he became one of the state's first real high-profile supergrass witnesses. And he was relocated. He gave evidence in court, very high-profile at the time. But he was brought into the proceedings there today.
Yeah, I was not expecting to hear his name or Brian Meehan's name be mentioned in the proceedings today. But basically it is Martin Foley's assertion. He's claiming that he was told that if he dropped proceedings against Charles Bowden, that Cab would in return drop these proceedings against him. So these were proceedings back from 2000 when he won £120,000, punts at the time, in compensation after he was shot in the back and on the finger.
Yeah, so what happened was it was a shooting. Like, Martin Foley survived, obviously, a number of very serious assassination attempts from everybody from the IRA to the Kinahan cartel. They've all had a pop of him, mostly unsuccessfully. But there was a shooting in 1996. I think it was outside a gym. Now, Brian Meehan was the suspect for that shooting. And Charles Bowden gave evidence about this during, while speaking to the Gardaí. He basically admitted to his role in it. His role was a lesser role. He was, I think he prepared the weapon in the house. He wasn't there at the actual shooting. Martin Foley was lucky to survive. And I think Charles Bowden ultimately gave evidence about burying the gun in a cemetery or something like that in the aftermath. So obviously, it would not be cool, let's put it that way, for a criminal to be suing another criminal for a shooting, and it wouldn't have been Martin Foley's style. But obviously it's another matter suing the state for the actions of a supergrass witness, because obviously somebody like Martin Foley, I imagine somebody like Martin Foley would feel that this guy is a rat and you can sue him, and what's anybody going to say? So, but of course, the state don't accept that claim that they made a deal to drop the
No,
case, do
absolutely
they?
not. And I mean, as well, just speaking about him suing people, he also has 2 defamation actions as well at the moment against Penguin Books and the BBC. But no, they don't, they're not taking that into consideration at all.
Yeah.
They basically said in court today, all the stuff that's been given in evidence. So they've given sworn affidavits, Martin Foley has, but CAB did note that the solicitor for CAB noted that, yes, they've given these sworn affidavits, but they haven't actually produced any sort of solid evidence. So they haven't given any, bank account statements. They haven't given any, totals even. They're not even saying how much that they're getting every month, every week from the Department of Social Protection or Social Welfare, because they're getting pension payment and his wife Sonia is on disability allowance. The court said that they haven't heard any evidence about what the disability is, because as part of this, of course, Martin Foley is trying to say that while he doesn't dispute repaying the debt, he's disputing the fact that they're trying to take the house to sell that to get the money. So he's saying that he's able to maybe give, a monthly or weekly payment from his pensions, but yet no evidence has been given to the court about how much he can actually afford to give.
Right. And obviously the case of his wife will be making is based around some constitutional law about people, the right to a home. But if you go back to some of where this bill comes from, Martin Foley was hit with a CAB bill. I can't remember the exact figure. It was a couple of 100,000, I think, at the time. It was in relation, so it's not a proceeds of crime case. It was a case about him not paying tax effectively. And the state would make the case that they don't know where this money has come from, and he has these sums of money. And he was hit with a bill for two periods of time. I think it was 1993 and 94. And 99, 2000. He was hit with a full tax bill of 218,000. Sorry, is the figure. So what CAB used to say, used to hear it more, is where if somebody has unexplained income, they're obviously investigating it as the Criminal Assets Bureau. They look into your accounts and or see what you've bought, and they see you've got 200,000, say, spent in that time. Now, they don't necessarily go and prove that that's the proceeds of crime, but what they say is, well, if you have that money and no matter where it came from, you haven't paid tax on it, so you now owe us a tax.
Yeah, so it's like if you're doing a nixer or something like that, and you're getting paid under the table or whatever it might be, and you're not actually declaring that to revenue, so you're not paying your PAYE or whatever it might be.
Exactly. Now, the Criminal Assets Bureau aren't going around looking at people for doing nixing for obvious reasons. So they look for Martin Foley for whatever reason. So he's hit with this bill in so when I say, I suppose, 30 years, if you look at it, it's from 1993. So that actually is, incredibly 30 years. But he's hit with this bill of 218,000. Now, at some point, he makes a certain amount of payments, I think 40,000, to bring it down to 178. And then in February 2002, he starts bringing legal appeals, basically.
Yeah, so he's starting to and that's what as well happened. Like the interest that's accrued over time seems to be what the big issue is with all the money there, because he's appealed that to the Court of Appeal, taken issue with paying the interest on it, which those appeals have failed.
Yeah, so they've failed. So he's appealing them, and he appeals it, I think, all the way up to the Supreme Court, and all that time the bill keeps going up. Interest is being added. I don't know about the costs. That could be an issue as well. So it balloons and it balloons up until we reach the figure of 738,000, which is a huge amount of money.
Yeah, and I think at the moment it stands at just under $1 million. So it's 916,000. Yeah, so it's gone up again. But that's something that his wife is saying that, or they're saying as part of this, is that this is, for CAB, proceeds of crime, that the home was actually belonging to his mother and he inherited that. So therefore, how could it be the proceeds of crime, because he got it from his deceased mother. Now, as well, as part of this, his wife Sonia isn't actually on the deeds of the home. So there's kind of this implied sort of, because she's married to him, it's implied that she's kind of has a half the interest in the home, legal interest. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the house is actually, the deeds have his ex-wife, so his deceased wife's name. So they were the owners of the home. And there was sort of this, questioning around whether or not he would now be considered the sole owner because he would have inherited it then after her death.
Yeah.
What kind of stake does his new wife have on the home? And of course, there's the matter of the fact that they have a child together. There was this intent that there might be a will there as well. But again, Cab stated that none of this was given as evidence before the court. They had no evidence of. They said they actually didn't even have evidence that they were married. There was no marriage cert submitted to the court. Now, they did swear an affidavit, so that is kind of considered as part of that. But other than that, there was no material evidence given.
No, and obviously this bill existed before their marriage. Now, she's obviously making a distinction between being hit with a final bill, but clearly the proceedings were ongoing. So, I mean, Martin Foley now is 73 years old. He's obviously his high earning days, one way or another, are probably behind them. Was there any talk of a compromise? I know there was some talk that they might have had some level of discussions, but were those options discussed in court?
Yeah, so just today there was an attempt kind of over the lunch hour for them to come to a settlement, but unfortunately they weren't able to come to an agreement on it. So the solicitor for Martin Foley, obviously the solicitor for Cab gave her, it was her submission that they would make an order for the sale of the home. So then the submission given by the Martin Foley was, first of all, he asked that the judge refuse the order. He said if she wouldn't refuse the order, he said, could she then adjourn it to the hearing in the High Court so that she could determine her legal
status, basically.
Yes, over the home.
Yeah.
And the third option, she said, was mortgage to rent. So the Foleys, we heard a lot about this during the course of the hearing, is they're looking to basically Cab can sell the home, but they can stay there and live it there and pay them rent. So they said with this option, obviously, nobody wins, nobody loses. And the child, their young child who's 10 years old, and Sonia, don't lose their home and end up in homelessness. And of course, he then said, if the judge was against all three, that they could readdress it. But this is not going to be heard again until next week. So obviously the judge has to have a chance to just,
And that wouldn't be uncommon, I suppose, in cases, certainly when homes are repossessed, that even if somebody no longer owns the home, that they're allowed to stay in it over their lifetime, and, they pay a degree of rent. But, the state, because of our constitution, in theory, we should be reluctant to make young families homeless. I mean, I think morally we should be as well. I mean, Martin Foley obviously owes this money no matter what. Did we hear anything about, what he's up to and how he's intending, or is he intending to pay it when you're talking about those?
Yeah, I mean, well, he's saying that he's intending to pay it and pay it monthly, but at the same time, he's also saying that they could never afford to get a mortgage or to get rent. Now, I understand that in the front of the sort of the mortgage, if you are, on disability allowance or on a pension, you're not going to be able to probably apply for a mortgage at the bank. But they had said that he is working at the moment as a van driver 2 days a week. And that's all we really heard. That again, there was no sort of evidence given to vouch for what they've been saying about the evidence of their means, their capacity to repay any of the bill. Should Cab take their home? And that was something as well that he had there was a kind of a statement given to the court on behalf of Mr. Foley, in which he said that there was no way he'd be able to come across €1 million. He talked about the distress that it had caused him to see the potential that his child would become homeless. He said he's 72, he's on disability, his wife's on disability, he doesn't have any assets. And the Dublin County Sheriff had came to their home a while ago and took possession of, I think it was up to about €2,000 worth of goods that they had sold on. And he is saying, well, this is proof to me that I don't have anything better to use to repay my debts, to offer. And of course, Cab are saying that that's not the case, that that's just what was there on the day. And again, he said that he wants to kind of set up a weekly payment plan. And there was mention of these 2 defamation cases against the BBC and Penguin Books. And he said that his wife and his child would suffer greatly, and that he would, because his wife has lived in the property since 2013, since they got married, and he obviously received it as a inheritance gift, that it's his argument that it's not the proceeds of crime.
No, I mean, it's funny, Martin Foley, a great survivor in one way, and he survived, being in the general Martin Cahill's gang. He survived falling out with, John Gilligan, then falling out very heavily with the Kinahans that came after him, falling out with some of the young Crumlin and Drimna gangs. But the state looks like it's gonna grind him down slowly but steadily, and it does make you think crime doesn't pay.
Yeah, it does. And do you know what as well? He's obviously somebody I've never seen in the flesh before.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, oh, is this person going to look completely different? But he actually looks quite sprightly and still sort of, the way he does in those older photographs. He's not somebody that's sort of been taken by his age or anything like that.
No, he's
Not
kept
yet.
fit anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, Clodagh, we'll come back to it next week, and thanks for that.
Thanks, Niall.
Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.